Hello and welcome to The Game Changers. I'm Sue Anstiss and this is the podcast where you'll hear from trailblazing women in sport. These are the incredible females who have knocked down barriers to challenge the status quo for women and girls everywhere. My guest today has had a huge impact in a very male environment. Before I introduce her, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Barclays for their continued sponsorship of The Game Changers. Few brands have done more for women's sport. Barclays are title sponsor of the Women's Super League, and they're also driving grassroots participation, working with the FA to ensure that every girl across the country has a chance to play football in school by 2024. Today I'm talking to Fleur Robinson, recently appointed Chief Executive at Wrexham, the football club now owned by Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. This follows Fleur's enormous success as commercial director at Burton Albion FC, a football club which recently experienced 2 fantastic years in the Sky Bet Championship. An accomplished business leader who's transformed the commercial side of the club, Fleur also has a huge passion for putting football at the heart of the community and making a positive difference to people's lives. She's a founding trustee of the Burton Albion Community Trust. Fleur also sits on the FA Council and she's a board member of the Women's National League. Fleur's dad was chairman at Burton Albion when she was very little. So I wondered what were her earliest memories of the club.
Couple of memories really, driving to Eaton Park with the playing fields and the sort of stadium in the background, and then being dropped off in the boardroom with the tea ladies. And Enid actually is still here now as a volunteer on match days in the boardroom. So and I think my other vivid memory was after a match being sort of plonked on the physio couch with this horrendous smell of liniment from what I can remember. And in those days obviously they had the big bath, so I can again vividly remember the state of the bath, obviously post-match when all the players had gone and the chairman was talking to the manager at the time. So yeah.
And other than Enid, do you remember, were there any women in positions of power or leadership within the club at the time? Do you see many women working at the club?
We did have Hazel Salt was our first female director back then. Has followed the club since, a local lady. So other than that, not for a number of years, obviously.
And was it an ambition to work in the game? When did you start sort of planning your career path?
Not at all, really. I always say it's one of my regrets, really. I was one of those at school. Academically, I did just okay. Went and did my BTEC because that suited me better from school and then on to university. And all things really I probably didn't really plan to do, just happened. And then getting into football really was, I always say it wasn't by choice. Obviously, having my father who got back involved again in the 90s, just sort of tagged along really, I suppose, and helped where I could with different roles. So it was never really a career path for me. It's just something that's evolved over time.
How much did your dad's business style or what he was doing inspire you? What did you learn from him in those early days?
Yeah, well, I think, he's always been, a very fair man, always sort of supported the underdog really. And I think that's really stemmed with the work that we do in the community. And that's always been the driver for everything that we've done here, which has obviously served as well as we've gone on that journey.
So how did you start? What was your kind of first role there?
Just helping out. After I'd finished university, I went to work with in my father's financial services business and insurance, which didn't, it was okay. I decided what I wanted to do. And I just got involved in sort of match days, build up to match days. And again, pretty much like now, really very varied, helping to stock the kiosks, work behind the bar, cook the food, just really hands-on. In those days we paid wages in cash. I had to go to the bank, do that, make the payrolls up and everything. So it was really varied, and it was a really good grounding for what I've ended up doing now, really.
And what aspirations did you have in those early years? Did you ever imagine you would be at the club long term as you started out?
No, not for a second. But I think because, the journey Burton's had, anybody that works in football, it's that hook. I always say every day is different, and that plays a big role. You don't get time to get bored and complacent. You're just always, hitting the ground running on whatever gets thrown at you that day. So again, at the time, it was just enjoyable. It was part-time and the business grew. And I think that was the other thing. It was a club, and that was a real difficult time, really turning it into a business. which football clubs are nowadays and have to be to survive.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And you're the first woman I've spoken to in a commercial role in a football club for the podcast. And there aren't that many of you. And you've kind of alluded to some of the different roles you've held during that time. But what's your day-to-day role entail now?
Well, I always say now that I'm the person that everybody comes to solve their problems, which I think is most things in leadership. But again, I get involved in all elements. I'm commercial director, but really it's the day-to-day running of the business. So I'm also club secretary at the moment. So it can be dealing with agents, signing players, supporting the food and beverage side. Pre-COVID, obviously running events, organising events. So it's a really different, varied role. Talking to sponsorship, dealing with suppliers. So it's really, really varied. And it has to be again at this level. We're a small club. We've got a very small team off field. We all muck in and help each other.
I spoke to both Kelly Cates and Gabby Logan for the podcast and asked if they ever felt more judged because of who their dads were and whether they thought people may have thought they got a bit of a leg up into football because of that. Did that ever bother you at all?
Yeah, we always have a laugh, Fleur chairman's daughter. It'll be interesting when I move on what I refer to you then. But I think, it's well, me and Nigel Clough when he was here, we always used to have a laugh about that because you're always judged by your father, and that's the first question that anybody asks you. And we always say if you had £1 for every time you were asked, but we wouldn't be where we are now without them. And it's just part of the job, really.
And can you remember how it felt going to meetings when you were probably the only female in the room and often the youngest too? How did you cope with that? I've
been really fortunate that, I haven't really encountered any negativity at all. And I know when we got promoted, well, it was actually the football conference. I went to my first commercial managers meeting at Walsall, and I was the only female. I was more than half younger than anybody else in the room, but it was great and, really supportive. I've learned a lot. Football's, a great environment off field where everybody's, most people get on and we all share ideas. So I've been very fortunate in that way.
And have you ever suffered with any imposter syndrome? I know that a woman in that kind of position has that affected you at all?
Yeah, I do. Huge. And, I think we speak to colleagues and, females particularly. And, I think that's can be a real hindrance, and it's learning how to work with that. And definitely for me, and I think, for me moving on to my next role, I've been at Burton for so long. With any job, any new challenge, you always have those doubts, but it's making sure that those positive nerves or those negative nerves are turned into positive and, make sure that pushes you forward.
And have you managed that in a different way across the 26 years or so you've been there?
Yeah, I think I don't know whether it's, I think as you get older, you recognise it a lot more. And I think having a family and all the challenges that come with that, it's having that balance. And certainly in the last 2 years, it's really, and it's very hard, but making that time to have some time for yourself, which is really important. And I've done a lot of walking. It's helped obviously with COVID, we've had the time to do that, but it's something going forward that I'll make sure I continue because it's just that decanting, your brain and recharging for the next week or whatever it is. And just that time to think things through. It's very important.
I completely agree there. I've walked so much, but just that thinking time, isn't it? That away time and thinking time. Yeah, absolutely. And as a woman in such a male environment of men's football, do you ever feel you've had to sort of play down your femininity or be slightly different in your approach?
Yeah, and I think again, I've not recognised that until later on in life, that being in that environment, you tend to act in certain ways, really. And I think I've always sort of leaned towards, male friends, male coaches or mentors. And, and I think it's only probably in the last 3 years that I've really started to connect with females. And it's a shame, really, because, I should have recognised that a long time ago because, there's a lot of support out there. And again, I suppose, when I started, there wasn't any females in my role or there was probably only one. And, it was hard to sort of reach out and find those people to speak to, but certainly now I've got a great network of female leaders and friends that are really supportive. Yeah,
and organisations like Women in Football developing so much too. Yeah, and hopefully like the podcast, we can spread the word and other women coming through can learn from your experiences too. Yeah. I've heard you say in the past that you don't feel you've really experienced much sexism in your career. Why do you think that is? Because people do believe that is the case in football.
I think probably because, I work for the family chairman, is very, very diverse, and has a very equal approach to everything that he does, particularly with our heritage as a family as well, I think. So I've probably been sheltered, if I'm totally honest, although I've had to deal with, with other clubs or leagues. I just think I've been in that fortunate position where, I haven't had to encounter that. Obviously, I know colleagues that have, not here, but colleagues elsewhere. Things are changing, but not quick enough, as we all say.
And how do you think we can encourage more women to consider working in football as a career option?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, and I'm a real advocate for this. I think you only ever see, coaches, players, and football can offer so many careers and diverse careers that, there aren't enough people that highlight that and the opportunities and ways to get in. Obviously, it's very difficult to get into the game, but once you're in, so many opportunities out there for you.
Exactly, using you as the example to attract others too. And what's the biggest challenge you think you face being a working woman and a working parent in such a demanding career?
Again, I think I'm fortunate because it's family. Working in football, there is not a lot of time for family, and quite often children don't come first. But again, that's for me. My girls have grown up to be very strong, independent young ladies, and I think that's played part of it. It's such a social environment to be in. I've been lucky that I can bring my children to work if on match days, and that's been great for them. That social environment for them to learn to speak to people and have that social side has been really important. But it is a challenge. It's a lot of guilty moments like there is with any working mothers. But I've been fortunate. I've had a good balance.
And you've been at Burton Albion now for 26 years, I think it is. So
yeah, it's 25% and we keep trying to work it out, but it is over 25 years.
Over 20. Oh, yeah, that's better. Over 25 years. But can you tell us about that journey from the non-league up to the Sky Bet Championship? What are some of the most momentous memories for you in that journey?
Yeah, well, we've been so fortunate to have so many. And I think the biggest thing for us is that, getting promoted into the Football League meant that we could really set the foundations. And, as I said earlier, the main focus was on community. So we were able to set our community trust up, which underpins everything that we do here, the academy, to make sure that we've got that succession for young players and opportunities. That's really helped us with COVID in terms of sort of releasing or selling a player last year, but, our survival really. So it's really important to set the groundworks. And I think the biggest thing for us, we didn't, it happened so quickly, those back-to-back promotions that we achieved. We were always playing catch up, really. But we've survived again on a small team. We've survived on some incredible memories in the League Cup, FA Cup journey. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. You've played a huge role in getting the Pirelli Stadium built so you could be promoted, as you say, to the Football League, and a mammoth task. So what was your strategy and approach to that?
Well, again, I think it all, that conversation just bore out of a chat after training one night with the manager and the chief scout at the time. And then that sort of snowballed really quickly. We'd got to the point where Eaton Park, we'd done as much development as we could there. And, to get anywhere else, we really had to have that commercial arm. So it was exciting, to identify the ground. We were so fortunate that Pirelli allowed us to purchase their old sports site, and financially at the right time when housing was, on the up and land prices were good. So it all just fell into place really. And I've said before, looking at a stadium, there wasn't really anything out there that was at our level that we could try and mimic. So it was really difficult to work out what was going to work and what wasn't. But fortunately, I don't think we've really made too many mistakes at all.
Fantastic, isn't it? Fantastic. And we talked about that amazing progression, but how tough was it for you personally to be relegated in 2018, was it?
Yeah, obviously any relegation, is not good at all. But I think the fact that, we never dreamed for a second we'd ever play in the Championship, and to get 2 seasons in there on our, very, very lowly budget, was just incredible and suppressed anybody's imagination really. So yeah, it was, it's very difficult, particularly last 10 minutes. And you look at Bolton, who got relegated the next season. So, it was difficult, but, you move on. And that period gave us a good opportunity for a lot of growth within the football club and a growth within the staff as well, so that going forward we're able to meet those challenges.
And how do you deal with that personally yourself? Because you're obviously seen as a leader and someone that's in terms of the club, in terms of how that affects other people's emotions around that.
Yeah, I think trait of one of the traits I've learned of my father is that, and at least this saddens me sometimes, that we have a very level approach to both success and and those disappointing moments, and we're never too excited or never too disappointed, because it eats into you, doesn't it? So we try and keep that level balance, really, that obviously then transmits around the staff as well.
And you mentioned personality and character traits. So what's it been like working with your dad? You described as a bit of a dream team, but it must be tough at times to work with a parent. I was wondering how you managed to balance that personal and professional. You wish he could just be dad or granddad to your kids and not your kind of colleague or chairman of the club.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, with me moving on, that's the one thing I'm looking forward to, that hopefully he will now be my dad again, because it has been really hard. Anybody that works in a family business will tell you that, don't do it. I don't think I'll do it again. And we keep saying now this, me moving on like an amicable divorce, really. But, yeah, it's really hard. There's no nepotism or anything. It's really been tough, but hopefully that's given me broad shoulders for my next challenge, really. So, yeah.
You can enjoy a fantastic Sunday roast and just talk. We'll
still be talking football, but yeah.
In 2016, you were appointed as a member of the FA Council. What was the gender balance like on the FA Council at that time?
I think when I joined, I was one of eight females. So yeah, and obviously that's changed. Changed since then, quite rightly. But yeah, at the time it was eight females. Yeah.
And did you feel at the time that your opinions were considered as much of the many men around that table?
Probably not, but I wouldn't say it's just because I was a female. I think it's because I was new to that environment, and it does take a long time to sort of get. Although so many faces there that I already knew from my non-league days and the professional game, but it certainly took me a long time to settle in. But not because I was female, just because it was getting used to the routine and the conversations and some of the new characters there. So yeah, but it's been really it's been great for my development to do that and have that opportunity.
And have you seen the culture change across that time in terms of gender balance?
Yes, definitely. It's it's far more diverse now than it was, and and that's how it had to be. And there's still, again, a lot of work to do, but it's definitely going in the right direction, certainly.
Excellent. And you mentioned the Burton Albion Community Trust. So how important was it to you in terms of founding that in the first place, and then the work that it does now?
Yeah, it's hugely important. And I think particularly over COVID, you look at the work, that they've stepped up the Community Trust from being a testing site, and all the work they did around the community shopping deliveries and all sorts of things. And now we're a vaccination centre. We've got vaccinations again all this week. So I think we've done over 50,000 vaccinations on site. So, it's really humbling. And I just think, we've got a fantastic team there, and everybody's working in that right direction. And we're so diverse again across those themes. I think we've been going 10 years now, and the people that we engage with in the community, it just it's really humbling, and really proud that we've been able to achieve that through a lot of hard work and some very dedicated people.
And has it grown? Clearly you're doing huge amounts now during COVID, but has the reach and the activity grown across that time?
Yeah, so we engage with over 8,000 people a week.
Wow.
From sort of toddler to 100, the age groups, through different ethnic communities within the town. So yeah, it's such a diverse. Walking football, we have a golden club on a Wednesday. We did pre-COVID over 100 over 55s meeting once a week to do various activities, even if it was just to sit and have a cup of coffee and read the newspaper or play dominoes or dance or walk. So many activities. I think that's shown through now that when we first set it up, people were sceptical about some of the work that we did, but now we're delivering a lot of things for the local council, for the county council, particularly with COVID. We've led on that throughout the county, which has been fantastic.
And is that all purely funded through the commercial takings of the club that
No, it's a separate charity, so it has to stand alone. I think that was a big challenge as well, of getting people's perception that they just thought it was another arm of the club, which it is in a way. We have Matt, the head of community. We pass each other every day, talk to each other every day, and it's like a department within the club, but it is it's totally separate organisation. Part funding through the EFL Trust, but obviously that's just a small element of it. So they're very reliant on other funding streams.
And you've been instrumental in the Inspiring Your Future initiative too. So can you tell me a little bit more about that and why it matters so much to you?
Yeah, I set that up a few years ago because I just, going back to what I said earlier, that, everybody just focuses on those key roles within football. And I thought it was really important that, we highlighted the opportunities with any sport, really. And I think the key driver for that, first off, was for the girls in terms of that confidence building. It goes back to that imposter syndrome, to see if we can try and put on some educational pieces to try and highlight that, because I think as a youngster you don't recognise that until you're later on. So it was really trying to eke out some of those traits early and look at the opportunities. And it was very, very indecisive at the time because I wanted to concentrate on the girls. Equally boys have to form part of that journey as well. So we did the first one with girls, then we did a boys one, and then we did a joint one. So we've had some real success with that with the local schools. And then we turned that into a business model as well for local business leaders. Again, looking at health and well-being, and you're always trying to look after your team, but do you really spend that time looking after yourself? So we've had a couple of sessions around health and well-being as well for local leaders.
I don't know how you find time to do all this. Fantastic. And of course, you're set to leave Burton in a few weeks. But how hard a decision was it to leave the club when you've achieved so much personally and professionally?
Obviously really hard, and I think I've never sort of sought to move anywhere really, but the opportunity came along when they approached me, and it was a journey that I had to have a look at and see, and the more conversations I had, the more it excited me. And I think my time of life, I think if you don't take these opportunities, they don't come around very often, and certainly feel that I'll be out of my comfort zone, but that's good. We should all push ourselves. So it was an opportunity in the end that I just couldn't turn down, and it has been a really hard decision, but a decision I've had to make for myself. Mixed emotions, feel very guilty leaving everybody behind, but you have to make these decisions in life, and hopefully it'll be the right one for me going forward.
Indeed. And as a recording, you're yet to take your new role at Wrexham. I know we can't talk about the details too much, but it would be remiss of me not to nod to the fact that your new bosses are Hollywood superstars, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. My family are massive Deadpool fans, actually. I don't know whether your daughters, teenage daughters. But how does that feel, I guess, from a personal perspective?
Well, again, it's exciting, but I think owners are owners. Whether the Hollywood movie stars, it's got to be the right fit. And I've said that if it hadn't been for the vision that they're looking to achieve at Wrexham, I wouldn't have even considered it. So I'm going very much with the mindset that they want to hopefully achieve the similar journey to what we've done here at Burton on the field, but equally an equal measure that community engagement, which is really important. And I think more football clubs should do that, working in that equal balance where you can. So I
have heard interviews kind of with them and about the purchase, and it does feel as if the community role, the role the club will play within the community, is so so important to them. So as you say, that is a real driver for you in terms of the transition you can make there too.
Yeah, hugely, because they people that are in the terraces or in the stands on a Saturday at 3:00, and you've got your future generations. So you have to build that community engagement for the success of the football club, but also for the benefit of the local community as well. And
obviously you took Burton on an amazing journey performance-wise. So do you feel any pressure almost to lead Wrexham on a similar path, or are you just very excited for the opportunity?
Yeah, it was obviously huge pressure. Wrexham is a big club, with so much potential, and there's a lot of excitement around the new owners, far more excitement than I ever imagined for my appointment as well. So, it's a huge amount of pressure, but, we've said from the start that this has got to be the building blocks. Rome wasn't built overnight. You see clubs who sort of rush through things and the foundations aren't right, and it catches up eventually. So the aim obviously is to get into the Football League, and that's got to be the one big aim, but it's got to be done in the right way with the right foundations for the security of the football club going forward in the future.
Excellent. Across the right period of time too. Well, I can't wait to see how the club develops under your guidance. Perhaps we can catch up again in a year or two and
would love to,
see where things are. We've obviously seen huge growth in the women's game in recent years, and clearly with the Sky Sports and BBC deal recently, it's set to grow further. Would you like to have seen more done at Burton Albion in terms of women's football, do you think?
Yeah, and that's something I've tried for a number of years. And we've had a women's team, but it's always been by name only. And we've tried a number of times to get them within the body of the club, but for whatever reason, with different personalities, volunteers, that didn't happen. But luckily, I was able to do that 18 months ago, and that's been a big challenge. But finally, we've got them under the umbrella of the club, and it's steady. It's starting to come together. And I've said to here that it must ensure a lasting legacy for me that continues. And again, I was really fortunate when I was at FA Council to get onto the Women's Committee, and which is now the Ambassadora Committee, and that was just such a breath of fresh air for me. I always said I wanted to get more involved in the women's game, but hadn't had the opportunity to, and I've learned so much from that time, which I'll be always grateful for, because it's a fantastic set of people, really inclusive, sort of opened my eyes really to what can be achieved. And again, going to Wrexham, that's going to be a huge element there to make sure that appropriate support is given to the women's game.
Yeah, I was really excited to read about that too. That's great news, isn't it? Great news. You've clearly had extraordinary success across your career. So as you look back, is there anything that you would think of that you are most proud of in terms of your time at Burton Albion?
I think most proud is as most women and who've got a family, is having that balance to be able to bring my children up and have a career that I have now. It's going to be a bigger challenge when I go to Wrexham, but they're fully supportive, as is the family. So and I just think people say what's your one big thing or top three things, but we've had so much enjoyment here at Burton that I can't really pinpoint anything in particular. So definitely the community trust, because that's a legacy for the club going forward. Some fantastic, activity on the pitch as well, and just building a great team here. We've got some very loyal staff, which we'll hugely miss, but I know that they'll carry on and make everything a success here.
And finally, what advice would you give to a younger woman, your younger self, or a younger woman wanting to work in sports management today?
Yeah, I think if you know what your career path is, I think it's just getting that foot in the door, which is really hard with football. And it might be that you have to be creative and get your foot in elsewhere, and then work your way to the position that you want to do. And I think don't be frightened to fail. I think we're all too frightened to take that step, just in case, what if, and that's holds so many people back. So does it matter if you fail? You've got to have a go to try. You've got to do it to fail. So let's have a crack at it and follow your dreams.
It's great to see a woman like Fleur who's clearly willing to try something new and follow her dreams. I look forward to watching her progress at Wrexham in the months ahead. If you'd like to know more about the other work that I do, including the Women's Sport Collective, a network for women working across sport, please visit fearlesswomen.co.uk. This is also where you'll find out more about all 66 of my incredible guests from this and the previous series. You can also listen to all the podcasts from the website and sign up for our weekly Women's Sport newsletter. Thanks again to Barclays for their kind support of the Game Changers, and to Sam Walker, our executive producer, and Rory Alscree, who does a lovely job on sound production. My guest next week is Francesca Brown, the founder and CEO of the Goals for Girls Development Programme. Fran is globally recognised for her amazing work in empowering young women through sport and education. She's a Prince's Trust Ambassador, a recipient of a Young Achievers Pride of Britain Award, and a trustee for the Football Foundation. She's also an international speaker, activist, mentor and coach.
The football pitch is an amazing place. You really bring people outside of their comfort zones on a football pitch. You really can listen to conversations where they're natural conversations. They're not forced in certain environments. So what we found was that the girls were able to freely talk about the issues they were facing, issues which they couldn't talk about to their parents or their teachers or their friends in school. These conversations were being had on the football pitch.
The Game Changers. Fearless women in sport.